Welcome into the Michigan State Hockey Hub. As this week we have a lot of news to go over, and of course, I brought in a returning guest, Nathaniel Bott. Nate, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Not too bad. I really appreciate you sticking around. 4:30 on a Friday is probably not exactly what you had in mind joining a YouTube hockey show.
No, man, it's all good.
Yeah, so we have a lot to get to today. The structure that we're going to run through is we're going to talk about the roster movements first, then the coaching, touch on some incoming freshmen, a little bit of update on the facilities, and then we'll get you out of here with a few quick questions. Sound good?
Sounds great.
So as we've known, these moves have been coming pretty much. It seems like every week there's something new since the end of the season, really. But these are a couple of the names that have decided to enter the portal, have gone elsewhere. Some haven't exactly landed anywhere yet. Um, you'll notice a few of these names are underclassmen. A few of them are taking advantage of the COVID season, the extra year of eligibility. Drew DeRitter, Josh Nodler, Christoph Papp, Aiden Gallagher, um, Christian Krieger, and Adam Goodsir. Were any of these surprising to you?
I think Nodler may be a little surprising given he only had one more season, and he obviously had a letter on his sweater last year for the Spartans. So I think he was maybe probably the biggest surprise. I think he landed at a pretty good spot. I think he'll be a pretty good
Yeah.
contributor for UMass. Uh, I'd say Aiden Gallagher a little surprising as well, given that he dressed every game for MSU. And seemed to have a little bit better footing, in the Big Ten his sophomore year. Obviously, the point production maybe wasn't there, but he seemed to be holding his own on the blue line. I think so. I think he probably just jumped at the opportunity to maybe get a little more ice time, maybe a little more production. He's headed to Northern, so I think he'll be a pretty good addition for them too. Other than
Yeah.
that, I think the rest of the guys. I will say I haven't confirmed whether or not Christian Krieger is returning for a fifth year. His brother Cole, um, I confirmed that a couple days ago that he was going to use his fifth year, given that the new coaching staff brings him in. It'll be kind of weird if both Kriegers aren't together since they're almost joined at the hip. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, we'll see about him.
Yeah, I think some of these names, Christoph Papp had classic change of scenery written all over him. A talented player who at times was I don't know if he was in I wouldn't say he wasn't in good graces with the coaching, but was put in a fourth line role in roles that he wasn't typically in. And it seemed like we see this a lot in football. I feel like you always see the wide receiver that's buried on the depth chart that was the 4-star, and you're
Mhm.
wondering, oh man, that guy is going to transfer for sure. It feels like it's easier to pick out transfers in football than hockey.
Mhm.
But Pap seemed that way. Nodler, I was a bit surprised by. The second part of his season really fell off.
Yeah,
Really fell
he
off.
started off really hot, and
Hmm.
yeah, I think he went on a 4-12 or 13 or something
Yeah.
point drought. So, but for what it's worth, I mean, if I had to pick out two guys who Danton and the coaching staff was most hard on, it would be those. It would be Nodler and it'd be Christoph.
Yeah.
I really think that uh, they had very high expectations for Pap to contribute right away, and I think it took him a long time to really get adjusted to Big Ten. And it's never easy, jumping in your first season. He's playing only a Big Ten schedule, doesn't have any non-conference to get acclimated to, doesn't have fans in the building. Um, it's a really tough situation to jump in, especially when those expectations are put on you right away. Um, as for Nodler, I think same thing. He was their highest draft pick on the roster. Um, I'm sure I'm sure Cole was expecting this year to be a 15 goals for Nodler, and certainly looked like it at the beginning of the year maybe was going that way, and then obviously hit a pretty big speed bump. So
Yeah.
I think a change of scenery for both those guys would be good. I think Pat might he might end up just going back to Europe and going that route. But for Nodler, it'd be nice for him to have a final year at UMass and produce well for them.
Yeah, and Drew DeRitter, I see exactly. I don't blame him at all. I doubt anyone does. He was, if not one of the top performers on Michigan State for a number of years, and he got an opportunity. He's just too talented to be where this team currently is. I know that sounds almost mean to say, but I mean, he's going to go to North Dakota, a program that's in a better spot than Michigan State, and have a great chance to finish out his college career. So happy for him as well. Is there anybody from this list, and you might not know the answer to this, that could look to return now that the coaching has changed, or is this more than just, wanting to play under a new coach potentially?
Well, on that list, obviously, the guys who've already given their commitments to other programs won't return. The only one on that list I'd say is probably Christian Krieger. I don't see Goodsir returning, although I think whatever the next staff is, I think would probably welcome him back. He's a good fourth line kind of grind guy, and can kill penalties, and hard worker, obviously. So, but other than that, the only one, Pap, who hasn't committed elsewhere, I don't see him. I don't see him returning. No.
Yeah. So Danton Cole said, which now is just kind of funny to say, but he mentioned that the roster was going to look different.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that with the departures already. Well, you have to replace those players, as you know. And Michigan State has brought in a pretty big list of transfers so far. Justin Jallen came in from Brown. Is that correct?
Yep, Brown.
He's a forward. Michael Underwood, he just came in. He's a defenseman from Clarkson. Nate McDonald, a goalie from, help me out here, Nate. Cornell. And Zach Dubinski, who is another forward, just came into the program. What can you tell us about these players?
Well, to start, I can confirm that all four are coming. Regardless, they're all committed under the impression that Danton Cole is the head coach, but all four are still committed to coming. Jallen was one of the leading scorers for Brown. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Loughran. He's got that small frame, kind of pesky in front of the net. Not afraid to forecheck physically, and despite the frame, I think he'll be a pretty good addition for him. They need as much offense as they can get from wherever. So as for Underwood, obviously a 4-year guy at Clarkson, not a big point production defenseman, but certainly a strong skater, good along the boards. He'll be able to play pretty well, in the D zone. Transition wise, I think is probably where he'll need to improve the most. Getting the puck out of the zone, through the neutral ice, and but I think they need deep bodies badly, obviously, especially with Gallagher leaving. So I think he's probably the most important addition of these four.
Yeah, for sure.
McDonald didn't play many games. I think 8 in his time at Cornell. But he was 7-1, so that's pretty good. Pretty good goals against average. But I think he's just kind of going to be a body who, he'll probably draw a few non-conference starts. But next year, I fully expect Pierce Charleston to be top dog in that, and he'll get most starts, if not pretty much every start, especially in conference play. And then as for Dubinski, he had a pretty good production at RPI. I think he'll probably work his way into a third line role where, that's certainly been an area where, Michigan State struggled to get production from in the last few seasons. They've really been a top 2 line heavy. I think I think Dubinski and Jallen will bring good depth to the forwards and good, potential scoring there.
Yeah, and I talked to Underwood and Dubinski in the past couple weeks since they've committed, and Dubinski, he mentioned how much pride he takes in being able to win faceoffs, and he was around that 50 some, mid 50%. And, it kind of fits where Christoph Papp was
Yep.
kind of the face-off guy
Yep.
last year, so I could see him easily sliding into that role. Um, he has more point production at the college level than Christoph Papp. I haven't seen enough of his game to say if one's an upgrade or over the
Mhm.
other. I'm not here to compare the players, but, Nate McDonald, that's a huge get because John Moore is the 3rd goalie on the team,
Mhm.
and as far as I can tell and from what I've heard, he's a pretty good 3rd goalie option, but those guys don't typically, especially in the Big Ten, slide up into number 2 unless there's
Mhm.
injuries. There was nothing behind Pierce Charleston, no incoming freshman, nothing. So that was an important get, just to even have a body back there, honestly.
Yep.
Underwood, tons of experience. I think he said 125-ish games he's
Mhm.
played. You cannot underrate that with how inexperienced this D line is. Incoming freshman that we'll talk about as well. But other than that, it's a lot of players who haven't played a ton of games. And Justin Jallen, I put out a little highlight tape of just some stuff I pulled from YouTube, and he's crafty.
Yeah.
This team doesn't have a lot of crafty.
No.
This team is the ugliest watch, from just, if you're not a Michigan State fan and you have to watch this team, it's not the prettiest, product right now. So having a little bit of craft to replace kind of, what Mitchell Lewandowski brought to the team.
Mhm.
So far I've liked the moves. We'll see how they play out, but, um, yeah, overall, I think that they've done pretty well in the transfer portal. Now, to the Coach Cole and Joe Exter portion of the show. To start here, I just want to I've given my opinions, did a whole podcast on my opinions on Coach Cole. I was not anti Coach Cole or anything like that. I was just reading the writing on the wall. In this level of competition, 5 years in, if you don't produce, it's really difficult to sell yourself, um, to come back. And we saw it with Tom Anastas. He didn't produce at the level they expected, replaced with Danton Cole. I think with Danton Cole, I don't think he's like a bad coach or anything like that. My personal opinion, and I'm not asking you to agree with this or anything, is the facts are the facts. He didn't get enough done. My personal opinion is just too many times it seemed like I won't say he lost the locker room, but there were some games that it looked like they just were not playing at 100%. They had mental mistakes, and I just noticed not too many players took a trajectory coming in and getting better each year. There wasn't enough development. Um, so yeah, Coach Cole leaving after 5 years at Michigan State. Joe Exter, who's in charge of the recruiting, a big part of the recruiting assistant coach, was let go of that position a few weeks ago. Nate, I'll let you have the floor to give any thoughts on the 2 coaches leaving.
Yeah. Well, what a with Cole's departure, I mean, talk about a hectic day. No notice really. I'm pretty well sourced with the program. I would have figured I would have heard something
Yeah.
before it got announced that maybe it was happening. Or I mean, I think most of the media here was pretty blindsided, and I think Danton was blindsided a little bit as well. Um, I know that athletic director Alan Haller had um, player exit interviews from the season and evaluations, and I think that ended a few days ago when he finally talked to everyone. And then obviously came to the determination that, um, Dan was going to be let go. So,
I
um,
I don't wanna interrupt you here, but I do wanna ask a question. Can you expand on what player exit interviews are like? Do you have any idea what kind of happens in those? Just to give us all some idea of what those may look like and what type of information may have come out of that to, lead or help lead to this decision?
Yeah, really. Mostly it's just more so it's just to get a feel of the player and how the player felt this season went. Maybe some things that the player might want to see changed, or particularly in down seasons, that's when you'll get more thoughts about the coaching staff and stuff like that. So um, really, it just would have been just a bunch of questions about what they felt the locker room was like. How do you feel about your teammates? How do you feel about the direction of the program? And obviously, enough players would have probably said, hey, it's not going super great. So
Yeah.
uh, then and obviously the decision was made. But I really didn't expect it. I thought I did think that they were going to give Cole at least another year, especially right after the season ended. The decision to dismiss Joe Exter. I thought that was the move, and now you're going to have a new assistant who's going to be in charge of recruiting, and we'll see what he can do with that, and we'll see what he can do with Munn being fully renovated for this season, and throughout how working with that throughout a full season, having a full film room, a shooting room, everything like that that they don't have currently. Um, but at the end of the day, ultimately you're right. The record after 5 years, even with COVID, you can blame it on a number of things, but the results weren't there, and the move is certainly justified. I personally would have probably given one more year, but you know,
Yeah,
again,
and
I can see both sides.
it's one of those things that, this is a very cutthroat business. It's not as cutthroat as college football,
Mhm.
where you don't perform in like year 1 or 2, a lot of times you're out. That's
Mhm.
wild. But, you know, um, Coach Cole, that was my issue. It's just I didn't see the progress year to year. And that's when I started to worry of, okay, he seems like a really nice guy. He seems extremely focused and works hard, but the results just aren't out there. And when I saw the product on the ice in the second part of the season, where it looked like at times players were taking shifts off almost, and we've all been there where we've had a manager or a boss who, after a while, the message they give, if it's not producing results or changing anything, it just gets watered down. Now, what I was saying previously was, with a new athletic director, you don't really know what you're going to get. He didn't have a track record at Michigan State where you could say, oh, well, he pulled the trigger quick on this coach or that
Mhm.
coach, or so it was kind of a wild card. And in a way, if which obviously I am, just a fan, I'm just a fan with a microphone. That's what I always say. Um, it is somewhat refreshing just knowing that there is a focus on this program and an urgency. If anything else, there's an urgency to become good again. It's pretty easy to take a sport like hockey and kind of just say, "We'll wait, we'll focus on other things." Um, but Alan Haller, is it Haller or Haller? I always forget.
Haller or Holler.
Haller,
I hear it both ways all the
yeah.
time.
Alan Haller took the time to sit down with all of these players, and that to me is a breath of fresh air into the program. Okay, there's a focus. It is a more attractive job now than it was a couple years ago because of the new facilities.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, and a new AD. Maybe that's you know maybe somebody didn't like Mark Hollis, or whatever it could be. There's a lot of reasons I think it's a better job right now. But as we transition into that being a better job, who are a couple of names who we should know who could be hired, if you can tell us anything about them, and then a timeline on when this hire could happen? Because when I was talking to Underwood and Dubinski, they were saying that they're not that far away. I think July is when they
Mhm.
report. If is that correct?
For the new guys, yeah, but I
Yeah,
mean, everyone who's currently on roster, they're still. I mean, they're training now.
yeah. So, who are a couple possible hires? Any information you can give us about them, and then a timeline that you expect?
As far as timeline goes, I've been told that they're moving pretty quickly. I would expect it probably within um, a couple weeks at least, but soon. Obviously, with the quick turnaround, and you've already committed 4 guys out of the portal. Yeah, and you got to get you got to get a coaching staff in. If you're gonna want a full off season to get better and get acclimated. Uh, I would say there's a few names. I think I don't want to say front runner, but I guess if I were an odds maker, I'd give him the best odds. But is Adam Nightingale? He's the current head coach at the development program. He's in his second year coaching the U18s. Before that, coached the U17s. Obviously, a former player here. He was the director of hockey ops for 4 years here. He coached at Shattuck St. Mary's, which is one of the top U14 programs in the country. Uh, Certainly has a good track record. I think he would be a very good recruiter, and but I think the slippery slope there is you're doing the exact same thing you did 5 years ago. You're hiring a former player and alum who, I mean, in Cole's experience, he at least coached a collegiate team for a couple years and actually went to an NCAA tournament with Alabama Huntsville. So, in Nightingale, you're getting a guy who has not coached at college level at any point. I certainly think he's qualified, and would be a good fit for, I think, recruiting aspects and whatnot. But you run the risk of again going to a guy who doesn't have a lot of
Yeah.
college coaching experience, and you're throwing him into a conference like the Big Ten, where you'll have perennial powers, and Minnesota is going to be good 9 times out of 10. Notre Dame is going to be a very good team. Michigan is going to be a very good team. It's going to be tough to compete. If you have a guy who maybe not used to the college coaching. Outside of that, Damon Witten at Lake State. He's a little trickier. He just signed a contract extension last year, at the end of last year. But he had an NCAA tournament appearance with Lake State 2 years ago. In his 7 seasons there, that's the only real good year that they had. This year they finished just below 500. But they're playing in the WCHA, which isn't the toughest conference to play in. So, but again, he's a former player and an alum, and he was also the director of hockey ops for 4 years here in MSU. So I think he's certainly a name that'll probably be floated around. I think he's a little less likely, but then in terms of what I think would be a home run hire would be if they could pry Mike Hastings away from Minnesota State. Obviously, proven winner. Been to 9 of the last 12 NCAA tournaments. Has tons of WCHA titles, tons of Coach of the Year titles. Obviously, went to the championship game this year for the first time in their program's history. It was in the Frozen Four the year before. It'd be interesting to see if the athletic department would be willing to throw some money at a guy like him and try to pry him away from.
That would be so big if they did that.
Yeah, a small school that obviously, I mean, hockey's everything at Minnesota State, and he's obviously built a great program, and would just could coach the rest of his days there and be loved, and but maybe try to, if they could throw enough money at him and pry him away from there to take on a new challenge of
That's exactly what I was gonna say. How often do we see it almost get stagnant with coaches? These guys are wired differently.
Mhm.
People in sports, like coaches, players, they're just wired differently, and they sometimes say, "Okay, well, I've reached this. I wanted like Tom Brady could have just stayed, or whatever." Like sometimes you say, "I want a new challenge," and you talk about legacy, just like, "Hey, I was able to go and be productive at this program. Now I'm going to bring this back
Mhm.
from the bottom." I mean, stuff like that does happen. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's not as ridiculous as it might sound.
No, I don't think it is either, and I mean, the challenge it would be challenging, but I mean, he's looking from an outside perspective. If you really wanted to try and again, you talked the appeal of having a new athletic director who's probably going to this is his first or second, I guess, with the volleyball coach, but second big hire. He's going to give you the time to develop or at least try to develop a winning culture. And obviously you'll have the brand new facilities, you'll be playing the best of the best. And I think you definitely have to shake up some of his recruiting style, but yeah, you never know. Some guys, he's had interest in other programs, or other programs have had interest in him, and he's decided to stick it out at Minnesota State. But now, given the fact that he's the last 2 years he went to the Frozen Four for the first time, and then went to the final game for the first time, maybe that's enough for him, and maybe that's maybe he's thinking, hey, well, time to take on something new.
Yeah. It'll definitely be interesting. Everyone has during NBA season Woj tweet notifications on. Are we gonna have Nate Bott tweet notifications on? Is it watch season now?
I don't know if I'm gonna have that many. Maybe you and maybe Jeremy.
Jeremy for sure. Yeah.
A couple other names just to float out. Probably less likely. Well, maybe not for one. Eric Lang at AIC. I think he's just a name that is going to be mentioned with any opening. He's obviously developed a winning culture and program at a small school like AIC, and he recruits a bunch of kids who just work their ass off and compete, and obviously that would be an exciting young hire to maybe revitalize the program, maybe with some youth. But I think he would be a pretty good fit. Even it would be certainly a big jump to go from AIC to Michigan State. But and then one last name, I think it's probably a little wild, but I did write about it. Is Jeff Blashill, who's the current Red Wings coach. If the Red Wings were to dismiss him, he obviously had one season at Western where they were incredibly successful after having 15 or so years of really nothing. He recruited a really good team and used that to obviously go on to the NHL after that one season. But I think he would be certainly an interesting hire. He's obviously a Michigan guy, from the UP, and I think that would be I think people will probably look at his tenure with the Red Wings and say, why are we getting that guy? Well, college and NHL game are very different. I think Blashill would actually be a pretty big home run hire as well. But those are just two other names to float out there.
Yeah, there's some other big time openings in the college hockey game.
Yeah,
so it's going to be competitive, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna. The potential to have BC, BU, Michigan State, and Michigan all open at once that's pretty wild. So
yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch, but I'm a little scared. So there's gonna be incoming freshmen, as there is each year. Can you tell us how many and who they are?
For right now, 3, and I've also confirmed that all 3 of them are still committed. I think the most important guy, defenseman Matt Basgall. He's having a very good year in the USHL. I think he kind of fits that the similar role of a Nienhuis, a really solid puck moving defenseman. He can certainly put shots on net, but I think he'll probably he'll be one of the top 4 D-men. I think he'll probably be with either Krieger or Gucciardi. But I think he's certainly, I think, the most important of the 3. And I think he'll probably his expectations are probably higher than the other 2. Forward Tieran Shouty, he's actually having a pretty good solid season in the USHL too. For what it's worth, he got traded midseason and for a first round pick. So usually, in the USHL, those picks are pretty valuable. So for a team to give up a first for him shows kind of his worth and his value. Um, he's more of an offensive threat than the other incoming freshman forward and Daniel Russell. I think Russell will probably be more of a fourth line kind of reserve guy, at least for his first season. But obviously, you never know. He could have a tremendous summer and find himself in the lineup. But I think Shouty will certainly be, or should be, a guy who dresses every game, and hopefully for the Spartans that he could produce right away.
Is Gavin Best?
Oh yes, right. Yes. Also, Gavin Best is.
Yeah. It was a wave of those first three,
yeah.
And then Gavin Best, I think, signed or whatever the same day or around the same time that Justin Jallen was.
Yeah, he was a late get, but yeah, he'll also be coming in. He's a bigger frame forward. He's a good. I think he'll be used pretty. In the penalty kill, and he'll be a good forward checker. Kind of like I think like a Jagger Joshua, but maybe less penalties in his first year than Jagger had. But just a physical body, a big frame, good skater. Certainly can score, but it's going to be interesting to see how some of those NAHL guys, kind of come into the Big Ten. It's I think just a slightly below, the USHL in terms of level of competition, but they have some other NAHL guys committed later on. One other guy, forward Laker Aldridge, he committed a couple days before Danton got let go. So I'm not sure if he would have to. This is his last year. He would have to come in to a program this year. I think it'll be up to the new coaching staff whether or not they end up signing him. We'll see. I think he's a name that it'll be a wait and see game for him to see whether he's a Spartan next year.
His brother's on the baseball team. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Any other prediction? Any other roster moves? Because here's what I'm going through this offseason. I follow baseball extremely closely.
Mm-hmm.
I have a full-time job, and I get on Twitter, and it's you or Sam or Alex or somebody tweeting out about a move here and a move there. I'm done. I'm ready for it to end. Do you think there's going to be any other roster moves coming down the pipeline?
Yes. And I don't think for a little bit, but it'll be with the new staff, I think.
Oh, okay.
It'll be up to them, but I'm sure they'll probably sit down, look at everything, and they might say, "Hey, we're not going to take you this year," or "Hey, maybe they bring in a new guy from the portal, or even a new freshman." I don't think anything currently on the roster right now, outside of potentially Christian Krieger returning. I think that's probably the lone one, at least for now, until a new staff's in place.
Can you clarify this at all or help us out here? Because there is a new coach, if a player is an incoming freshman who has signed or a transfer that has committed or whatnot, can they back out if they choose to immediately?
Yes, they can. But again, I talked to Baskell a couple days ago, and he said he's fully committed. He's excited to be a Spartan, and then he also confirmed with me about Shouty and Russell as well. So as far as I know, that they're all three of the freshmen are still committed. We'll see. I mean, one of the transfers theoretically could back out if they maybe don't like the guy that they're bringing in, but that's just they can do it if they want to. Yes, they can withdraw.
Following all this movement must have been hard for you to kind of keep up with. I can imagine just you at LSJ complaining about it and someone saying like Mel Tucker, who I don't know who covers football over there, but somebody just being like, well, we had to deal with 20 whatever of these, come on, Nate.
No complaints, man. I
Yeah,
kind of actually like it. So,
yeah,
like,
yeah. It's something to talk about for sure.
yeah, it's always a good feeling breaking news. So,
Yeah. So the facility update, any update at all on it? Yeah, I just feel like there's so little known about it in terms of just like, you know, from Twitter, I feel like if this was football, we'd be getting a live stream of it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But since it's hockey, it's like one day we're just gonna walk in and it's finished and we'll see
yeah.
like two pictures.
Well, the weight room was finished even during the season. Towards the end of the year, they were able to
Yeah.
start using the new weight room. Um, as far as I know, I believe the lounge is pretty much done. I don't really have much of an update in terms of everything. Well, like I said earlier, they're going to have. Um, I mean, the upgrade is substantial. I mean, they're going to have like think about. I mean, a college program. They're watching their film like in a just like a classroom. Instead, here you're going to have like a full film room. Um, with a whole bunch of fancy tools to watch your opponents and diagnose what they're doing. I think that's a big thing that Michigan State's been. And you look at every school in the Big Ten. Every school in the Big Ten already has this kind of stuff. Michigan State's kind of the last one to really get this. I think it's going to give a little bit of competitive balance, hopefully. Um, to think that anytime that these guys want to go practice their shot, they have to go lace up their skates and go on the ice and shoot. Here you're gonna have like a full shooting room with a whole. There's just things that it'll be a lot more convenient and a lot. Just there's a lot of things that'll certainly be better in terms of development and then obviously attracting talent. So I don't have a full update on what's finished and what's not, but I'm expecting it to all be done by at least September. Before this, right before the season, or as the season starts, they should be using that whole new facility.
Awesome. Well, before we get you out of here, we want to ask you a couple kind of rapid fire questions. There's one I have these ready to go up on the screen, but I thought of one while we're here, so I'll start off with that. And I may have asked you this the first time you came on, but who has been your favorite player to interview or talk to? Either you find it most interesting, or he's really funny, or has been your favorite player? I know like a lot of people always talk about how they loved interviewing Cassius Winston. Like in any
Yeah,
interview you heard with him was so interesting.
Practice
Who
was
is that
great. Yeah.
specifically for the hockey team?
Oh yeah. My favorite is probably Jared Rosberg. Um, he was he was a lot of fun. He'd always be kind of the last guy off the ice. So whenever we had availability, we'd interview him, but he was definitely one of the guys who would like talk a lot afterwards, just not about hockey or about whatever.
Yeah,
He's very, very open and fun guy. Zach Osborne was also like that.
yeah. I like this guy. I always said Rosberg was really underrated. I felt like.
Yeah, he
Um,
was a really good player.
Yeah, he's playing in, the AHL now for the Texas Stars, I
Mhm.
believe, or whatever they're called, the Dallas Stars
Yeah,
AAA, if
Texas
you will,
Stars.
affiliate, so, yeah, he was a good player,
Mhm.
man, it seemed like he was here forever because he had that injury in the beginning of his career, but
Mhm.
okay, favorite TV show?
Uh, if it's a drama, probably Breaking Bad or The Wire. Um, maybe The Sopranos. Comedy, definitely. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay, see, Dubinski also said Breaking Bad, and I love Breaking Bad, I've seen it
Mhm.
6 times, so him and I discussed that a little bit. The Wire I've seen as well. I lean Breaking Bad there. Always Sunny is a good show. I haven't seen it all the way through though, but those are all good picks. And The Sopranos, I've seen uh, all the way through, and another good show. Favorite food spot in East Lansing?
Crunchies, no doubt.
Man,
Easy.
I was there in December when I went to the games and got a burger, and it's just so good.
Yeah,
It
it's nice with usually Neil Kepke and I were the last two in the press box. he takes his sweet time writing. But our buddy Rico is the on Thursday through Saturday. He's the bouncer, so we get to go in, and after they close, we're still there, and having a good time and whatnot. So yeah, Crunchy's great food. Obviously, beer is always cold there, so good
Yeah.
Long Island's.
Yeah, every time I go up there, I typically stop in for something there,
Mhm.
quesadilla. I mean, their menu's crazy. I mean, it's ridiculous how many different things they have. Like, there's just not many places here in Kentucky that like you can get a pizza, burger, quesadilla, nachos. Like, it's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah. No, Crunchy's is definitely one of my favorite spots.
Favorite sports teams, professional.
Um, I'm a Detroit kid. I always grew up, watching all the Detroit teams. So probably, those four guys have kind of grown a little partial to uh, the Vancouver Canucks. That'd be my other hockey team that I root
Yeah.
for. Don't know why. Don't have a reason. Just kind of like their team and started following them.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, pretty much just the Detroit teams. In terms of, I guess I also watch a lot of soccer. So um, I like Wolves. I like Chelsea. Those two from the English league.
Yeah.
And then PSG. Also a big fan of them.
See, it's such a blessing and a curse to grow up in a city that has. So I'm from Louisville, Kentucky.
Mhm.
Therefore, I can choose whatever team I want.
Yeah, you're a big
Um,
Bills guy, right?
yeah. And the way that this works is when you're like 6 years old, 6-year-olds don't make good decisions. You pick a team off of stupid reasons,
Mhm.
and then you're just married to that. And then it sucks because every time you go anywhere, someone asks, well, why are you a blah, blah, blah fan, And it's like, why do you expect me to have some awesome reason when I was 6 years old when I decided this? Like, I
Yeah.
don't make good decisions, but in your case, you grow up there. I also think it's funny, just the idea of, like, in 2022, when you can follow news across the world at the, touch of your fingertips, we, like, just happen we like the closest team. I get that in, like, the 50s because 'cause you're following the team and stuff,
Yeah,
but
sure.
the proximity thing, always kind of when you really think about it, it's kinda funny to me, but
One other is the Cincinnati Reds because that was the first baseball game I went to outside of Detroit. Was a
yeah.
Reds game in
See,
Cincinnati.
I'm a
So,
huge Reds fan. So
there
if
you
you
go.
ever have any Reds questions, I write for a website called Just Baseball, which I feel like I've mentioned like every time, even though this isn't a baseball podcast. So I talk about the Reds a lot. So always
Yeah,
down
but
to talk some Reds,
I'm in
even
a
though they're pretty bad.
I'm in a dynasty baseball league, and I have Jonathan India
Ooh,
as one of the
nice.
early prospect picks.
He got injured last night. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that, but
Keep an eye on that. All right, last question before we get you out of here to head over to Crunchies and have a beer and a burger. Favorite article you've ever written? Have you done
um,
any of those kinda, like I know you've done some pretty cool pieces. I remember, I think it was Middendorf, you kinda wrote about him coming in.
yeah,
Um, you've done some cool pieces.
I definitely have one that sticks out. This was before I was at LSJ. Um, I was I wrote a thing for iSports Web, which doesn't actually exist anymore. But uh, I went out to Denver and with the Colorado Spartans and the Sadler Foundation, and
Oh, yeah.
I did. I don't have a particular one because I wrote like 5 or 6, but um, I did a whole bunch of stories about the Hey Diddle Diddle beer when it
Yeah.
first came out. Um, Obviously, in terms of the timing, it was pretty recently to um, Mike's passing. So, but that was just that whole experience more. Spending like 3 days there, going through the whole brewery, having the big fundraiser with a bunch of former MSU players who played with him there, and um, that was just the whole experience was really rewarding. And
Yeah, that
even though iSports Web wasn't a big outlet or anything, and I obviously was just at State News before that, so my following wasn't as big as it is now. But not that it's big in general, but it got a lot of attention and a lot of clicks, and I think a lot of people enjoyed it. So I think that one was that more so that experience and just that grouping of articles. I would say probably my favorite to
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah, that was such a terrible situation, but um kind of how they were able to build off of that and make the beer and kind of stick around the program and how they've been honored. I think all of the aftermath of that has been played um so well and presented so well and done so well with the
Yeah.
program.
Mhm.
I'm glad that they were able to keep Mike's name um, in memory going through the program. So yeah,
For sure.
that's awesome. Do you
Yeah.
still have the article?
I could dig it up. Yeah. I have it saved on some.
Yeah.
It's kind of
I didn't know if it was deleted forever because
no.
the
I
website.
have it. It was. I guess you probably can't find it on the internet now,
Yeah,
but I do have. I have copies of it, and I
yeah,
have it saved on my uh,
awesome.
docs. But yeah.
Well, 5:09. We'll get you out of here, get you home for the weekend, allow you to watch, some baseball and follow that fantasy team of yours. I'll be doing the exact same thing right after we get off here. So, Nate, thank you so much. We'll definitely have you on. I hope my schedule's better next season. I struggled, I started like doing this 4 weeks into the year, didn't really have much of a feel for what I was doing. So, gonna have a much better schedule. Um, and we'll definitely get you on some either previews like you did for I believe you did the Penn State series in the past or
Mhm.
recaps. We'll have you on a bunch, but I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah. Of course, man. Always a pleasure to join you. So, you yeah. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for having me. Glad. Hope the people enjoy.
Yeah. Again, this is Clay Snowden with the Michigan State Hockey Hub. Go Green.